Country Museum of the American West, who will speak about the recent play on boarding schools that was performed in Central Valley this week. So let's begin. Why don't you introduce yourself and tribal affiliation and your role in the play that is being performed here in Central Valley on boarding schools?
Okay, well, I'll start. My name is Allison Hudson Hicks. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation. I'm also of Choctaw descent. And I am an actor with Native voices, and I play all the angry white women in the play. And I also play the indigenous, the American Indian theater teacher of Westview Indian High School, which is the contemporary part of the play.
I'm Dwayne Menard. I'm a Paiute Yurok. I'm an enrolled member of the Yurok tribe. In this play, I'm playing grandfather. I'm also playing a 8-year-old child. I'm also playing a Navajo father, as well as a teenager, and a principal of a high school.
I'm Jennifer Bobbywash, and I am an enrolled member of the Ojibwe First Nation, and I am the stage manager. Behind the scenes, so not on stage.
I'm a Kalan Studi. I am a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I play rebellious young men to a school superintendent. So,
I'm Isabella Ajisi. I believe I'm of Cherokee descent, but I'm not enrolled. And I play a young boy who's taken away from his grandfather. I think he's 8 or 10 or something around there. I play a lot of feisty teenage girls, and I think that's what, those are my roles.
Thank you. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
hello.
Thank you.
So what is Native Voices? Tell people who may not know about they never heard of this group. What is Native Voices?
So Native Voices is a Native American theater company based in Los Angeles. We're founded in 1994, and we were founded just because there was an absence of Native voices out there. Our producing director, Randy Reinholtz, he was approached to find Native plays, and they discovered that there wasn't anything out there. So from that, they kind of fell into it, and here we are all these years later.
Okay. So for those who aren't familiar with theater, why was it important to have a play that is centered on Native voices or indigenous perspectives? What's the theater world like, if you will?
Presently, or?
At the time that it was formed in the 90s.
They found that there was really a lack of, there wasn't anything out there. You know, you'd think, oh yeah, we can go find a play, but they really had a hard time doing that. So Native Voices was developed to develop playwrights. And it's come a long way. Like when you see, because every year we have our submissions, and we're getting more and more every year, soliciting plays from across the country and Canada.
So tell us about the play that you performed yesterday on the boarding schools. Mm-hmm. One, for people who may not know about, the history of boarding schools, and how did this play come about, and why is it so important to tell this story?
The boarding schools were a way for the U.S. government to assimilate and re-indoctrinate Native peoples into their world. So it was education through extinction. So they wanted to take away our culture, our language, our religion, and strip us of that and remake us into Americans. So it was a brutal and cruel and devastating process, and we wanted to shed a light. I think a lot of people are not aware of that history and what was done to Native peoples, and we want to shed a light. We want to bring a light to that.
How about for others? Why was it important to tell this story, or what's the experience of telling this story through theater?
Well, theater is such a great vehicle for telling stories because you can put a lot of the actor's experience. You can take a playwright's words and you can make it all come alive. And a lot for us, for this particular story, we've heard the stories from our grandparents, we've heard the stories from our moms and dads, and we have our own experiences that we can infuse into these characters to what we think is to bring them to life a lot more, with a lot more realism, with a lot more texture and feeling, as well as also show that we're still here as a people, and that we haven't disappeared, and that we can now have a voice, and theater is a perfect vehicle for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, in my classes, I incorporate that in ethnic studies, right? These different histories of marginalization, and it's interesting to see how students know very, very little in general, just about, you know, histories that aren't really told, but particularly, you know, First Nation people or Native Americans. So theater can definitely be one of the ways in which we can also educate, and very important to have this. So for the actors who started, you know, prior to this play, how has the industry shaped, how has the industry changed over time? How was it when you first started to do theater, and how is it now?
Well, for me, you know, I kind of started theater in a weird kind of way. I was actually in law enforcement doing undercover stuff, and then kind of looked at theater. So when I started looking at theater in the early 2000s, there wasn't anything for a Native American actor per se. Whereas today, we're all working different plays. I've been all over the place, as well as Kalan, and the rest of us have just kind of had our hands full with a lot of different plays, not only contemporary plays that kind of show the struggles and the happiness and the sadness of Native people today, but also historical pieces. So it has changed, and like I said, our voice is getting stronger and stronger. So now we're not just doing other people's interpretations of what Native people have went through. We have Native folks actually writing, producing, directing these pieces. So it's a complete change for me to see. The industry has moved. It still has a long way to go, but it is moving in the right direction, in my opinion.
We've achieved a milestone in that our executive and founding director, Randy Reinholtz, has had a play produced at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, in his place entitled Off the Rails, which is also a riff on the boarding school stories. So that we're slowly edging into the mainstream. So we're getting there, definitely getting there.
And you had mentioned that there's a long way to go. So what are some of the changes you think that still need to happen?
Well, like she had mentioned, Randy Reinholdt's play is the actual first play that the Oregon Shakespeare Festival has done. And the Oregon Shakespeare Festival is a huge thing here on the West Coast. And that's the first one in 80 years. So that's just the first step. Getting more plays like that, which now they've got another play that they're going to do again from another Native American playwright that they're going to do for next season. And we just want to keep that trend going. There's a big festival in Utah that we would like to get some things going in there, and get more things in the Southwest where there's a huge Native American population down there. So getting these, training the actors, the playwrights, the folks behind the scenes, as well as getting into film and video, and getting those things also brought into light, so to speak, and showing a spotlight on those areas, and just keep it moving forward. There's always been that progression that I've seen in my lifetime with Native film and stories, and then it stops for a while, and there's a void, and that's what we're trying to avoid, is that silence.
So it's almost how do we create certain like pipelines or institutionalize certain mechanisms that can continue, because I've noticed not only in the arts but in other spaces, let's say with like activist movements, right? There's like a sudden thrust for change, and then maybe months later it just kind of dissipates. Which there's a lot of reasons for it, right? But how do we make it sustainable, if you will, or long term? And I think that's one of the challenges.
These folks right here, the younger generation that are up and coming, it's time for them to take the reins, move it forward, inspire and instill in the younger generation behind them to keep it going. I think that's key for our people to do that.
So maybe I can ask then the younger folks, how has the experience been for you, and why is it important to be part of a project like this one?
Well, I think, starting with schools, I think it is really important to start with the education, whether that's in theater, performing arts, any arts, or in history. I think there can be a shock, because I'm just out of school. I just graduated from college, and there can be a shock in coming out of an institutional environment and then entering the real world and learning how to navigate the things that you discuss theoretically in a class, and then learning and confronting that in real life with real humans and their real stories. And so being part of a project like Native Voices has opened my eyes to what the reality of the industry is, and it's not just sitting around in a classroom talking about what it has been in the past and what it might be, but it's real people working right now trying to get jobs and trying to push for more projects like this and getting more exposure widespread. And I think, for youth, it's important to be exposed and be put in uncomfortable situations like that and challenge ourselves and challenge the people around us, because that's how progress will be made.
How it's impacted me is it's just been incredible to work on a piece that is, sourced by natives, which doesn't happen a lot. And I think one of the key things that needs to happen to secure, our future, especially in the entertainment industry, is that we need to start telling our stories. And, that means kids fighting harder to get into art school and, doing everything that they can. And, my work's certainly not done. But I just think that that's the key, is that we need to start, taking the reins and telling our stories, because as great as interpretations have got recently, and, seeing that natives, are people besides just this romanticized stereotype, as great as they've been, they still haven't gotten it, because there's still that distance of perspective. And I think that also has to do a lot with how history is handled in this country as well, because, here in the U.S., we love to romanticize the past. It's always, oh, we overcame, we did away with this horrible thing. But it's like, yeah, but you need to understand all of the reasons why that happened.
And this is why I think theater is one of the ways in which we can educate people about these histories that are often occluded, systemically occluded, I would say. I mean, not just sometimes people don't know or romanticize, but they're also structurally in place so that people don't know this history. Because what would happen then if people did know this in a public setting, for example, that boarding schools is part of the American history?
Exactly.
You see, so what does that do? And I know, we incorporated in ethnic studies, these histories in our courses, and many, especially the young people, are transformed because, one, they're aware of something that has been denied, and two, I think it may inspire some to think about how they can change, education or their environment. So the work is happening in multiple fronts, the arts and education and, in the community, and it's a lot of work, especially given the current context. If we think about it politically, the president is defunding the arts in many ways, you see, so there's a lot of challenges to consider in this struggle. Now, what are some of the role models or influences that you have all had in this journey of being in the world of theater?
Well, truth be told, there aren't a lot of Native American actors out there to fashion yourself out of. Actually, we have someone here whose father, Wes Studi, is a very famous Native American actor. So we've all looked to Wes, your father, as a role model, as someone to follow. and he has also extended a hand to those of us coming up. So that's been one role model, but that's very endemic of the issue of the problem is we don't have representation.
So for me, most of my role models have not come from acting. My role models were the ones that have survived before me, like my grandma. My mom's mom was very inspirational. She instilled that you need to preserve your culture. So she was the first one to teach me how to dance, how to do singing, stuff that I thought I probably was just going to keep for myself, but now I've kind of taken those things and worked them into theater by knowing, oh, I know how to dance that way, and I know how to sing that way, and I know how to use this instrument and that instrument that's traditional native instruments, and put it into my acting bag of tricks, so to speak. So that's where I've kind of gotten my inspiration and my desire to want to continue to act and do those things.
Number for others, where do you find your inspiration?
I've been involved with Native Voices for a little while, so I've seen some people. For me, I appreciate like Zon McLaren just because I knew him when he did theater, and now you can't find like he's the kind of go-to Native guy. So I really look up to him and what he's done and how far he's come.
And we mentioned your father.
Yeah, who, not so much a role model. No, I'm kidding.
He won't see this.
He won't see it. But no, yeah, my father was a great inspiration for me because not only is he an actor and made his way through theater in Oklahoma, through theater in Los Angeles until his first role in film, but he also, he was he was probably like the last generation to be in the boarding schools. Like, he tells me stories of how he was on the train going surrounded by kids from all other nations. And then when he was 18, he decided to join the war effort in Vietnam to, expand his horizons and understanding of the world. And then growing up, having to watch him, work, which was always weird to see him on screen, and then have him come home, and then a year goes by, and it's a struggle because he's an actor and things don't always work out. But he always inspired me that he always did his best to take care of his family when, times were tough. And I'm also inspired by Randy Reinholds, the director at Native Voices, just because, and Jeannie, of course, his Jean Bruce Scott, his wife, who are just this dynamic power couple that have built a platform for us which wasn't there before. And obviously Zon McLaren, because he gets to play he's worked so hard and he gets to play just awesome roles. Like, if you haven't seen Fargo season 2, that's just a plug right there. But yeah, so those are the kinds of people that inspire me.
I didn't grow up looking to many Native role models that are famous. I do have a personal story that is something that stuck with me and partially why I think I was inspired to become involved with Native Voices. And it was from a time when I was really young in elementary school, and a woman came to our school and did a site-specific performance where she took us to a river and set up a wigwam, and we all sat inside, and she spoke to us about her culture and her history. And to me, I think for some reason that made a larger impression on me than anything I learned in history books in school. Because I got to see and touch materials that she was talking about, and I got to look into her eyes and hear a human's family's stories, not just statistics and numbers and dates on a page. And I think that is what theater and performance can do. It can expand a paragraph in a textbook into this very real, human, relatable experience. And that, I think, was a moment for me in my childhood where I realized how important it was to continue to tell these kinds of stories and make it relatable for everyone.
So what advice do you have for young people or students who are of marginalized backgrounds and are interested in either engaging with their communities or are thinking about the arts or theater as a way to be involved in their careers? What advice do you have for this population?
I would say create your own opportunities, write your stories, perform them, get them produced anywhere, everywhere, engage with your community, solicit feedback, and keep going. I think that we need to look towards people of color like Mindy Kaling, who created her own show and built her own platform and amplified that and create that sort of opportunity for us.
Yeah, I think we're in a very, I'm sorry. God. I just really wanted to say that. No. I think we're in a very important era right now because of social media. I know when I started out as an actor, there wasn't anything, but then YouTube and stuff started to come about. So I'm like, well, I can write stuff and I can put stuff out there. So there's so many opportunities. And like Allison said, just go out there and create, because you have the internet, you have like your phone, you can, make a video on that. And the world is at your fingertips, essentially.
For me, I think education is one of the key things for any young person coming up. Through education, you learn the things of discipline. You learn the things of hard work, dedication, going after that 4-year degree. Once you can get those things done, you can grow into so many different things and go into so many different areas. One of the things with acting or with theater or film is being able to be versatile, doing a number of different things. And then, because as you're growing up, you sometimes don't know exactly what you want to do. If you do, that's great, that's some good focus, but there's so many different avenues in this world of theater and film that getting that education and then finding your niche with so many opportunities now, and the more opportunities that are there, the better opportunities there are for young people, and just to keep that going.
And I'd go with the cliche of don't be afraid, but purely in the sense that fear is something, that is in our bodies to tell us when something is dangerous or, we shouldn't be going towards that, but it's also something, fear can also let us know when we're on to something good. And I'd also say, if you're a writer, go for those stories that are a lot harder to tell, because those are most likely the stories that have been just swept under the rug.
I would say find your people, find the people that you work well with and who inspire you, and I think that the people you're connected to in life are your most valuable resource. So I think there's a restlessness that comes with youth, but also youth of this day and age, and don't be afraid to take the time to build long-lasting relationships and keep people close to you who can continue to pave a stronger road ahead of you.
Any last words that you have regarding the play that you want to tell people about, or just in general, any words that you think you want to just let the audience know about the work that you do, or anything just related to final thoughts?
I just want to say one thing about the show that actually kind of came up as a subject last night. The show is not meant to bash white people by any means. By any means is it not supposed to be like, oh, look, this was a race that was completely subjugated, and this is the race that were the bad guys in the situation. Which in reality, and in our show, we portray characters that, there were people working in the boarding schools that actually did care and believed internally that they were doing something right. So I think it's just important to remember that they're all human, and no human is perfect by any standard. But the important part of the show is to tell stories that haven't been told.
Any other final thoughts?
We really appreciate this university for giving us the opportunity to bring the show to you and tell this difficult, it's a difficult story to tell. It's a difficult legacy to examine, but it has to be examined for us to move forward and to be seen as contemporary people. We're still here. Our survival, our resilience is a testament to our ancestors' survival.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's it for today's episode on Woke in the CV. Please check out other upcoming shows.